Hey everybody, my name is Saul Colt. I am the founder and I guess chief creative officer of a agency called the Idea Integration Company. I've been creating experiences for people for, I don't know, close to 15 years. And the best advice I ever got in my life was surround yourself with people that really get you, because that's all that really kind of matters.
Wow, that's great
Mhm.
advice, Saul. When did you learn that advice? That's just fantastic advice, man. How long ago did you figure that out?
I don't think I ever figured it out. It was given to me, but it's something my dad told me, because it's one of those things, and I could give you kind of shoebox advice all day long, because I love just talking to people and soaking things in, and part of every conversation obviously is listening as much as you're speaking, and things like that. Other great advice I gave was. Other great advice I received, a dear friend named John Suntress, who is a former boxing journalist and quite renowned comic book journalist and pop culture historian. He told me, and he's a little older than me, and he told me that with age, everyone thinks with age comes wisdom, but with that's not actually correct, because you don't get smarter. With age comes perspective. And I've always really thought that was fascinating, because I think that one thing everybody kind of needs to do and doesn't do enough of, and I'm guilty of it too. I try to do it, but it's not always possible. Is to stop, slow down, and just kind of look at the whole picture, and I try to sort of figure out what's going on.
Yeah, great advice,
Hmm.
Saul. So,
I'm
so
like
you do,
Oprah today. We should just
yeah,
keep it going.
that's
Mhm.
it. So, what color is your couch, Saul, that I can come lay on so you can give me advice and make me feel smarter?
I actually, to be one of the truth, my couch is like denim color. It's like it's
Cool.
like it's like jeans almost. So it's comfortable. It needs. I need a new couch because I've had it too long. But I do like it.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we just got a new white microfiber couch here, so we'll sit on my couch today and we'll talk about marketing and experiences because that's what you're known for, man. Somebody said they're quoted on your website from the London says you're like a mad scientist. You're so out of the box that if you're not inspired by his ideas, you don't belong anywhere in your marketing. And I can tell you that's how I got introduced to you, man, with some cool experiential marketing that you did, gosh, 10 or 15 years ago. So why did you get involved in marketing? So why has it always been something that you've done?
So I really fell into it. I grew up in a family business, and my parents owned a corrugated box company, and I did every single job in the company from 13 years old on. I drove. I was probably the only 16-year-old who had a AZ truck driving license and drove. Made deliveries in summer. Instead of going to summer camp, I was driving a 20-foot straight truck and all around the city and doing deliveries. And I literally did every job in the company right up to running the entire company. And, uh, it was one of those things where I had to learn every role, and having to learn every role, I kind of realized that the finance stuff didn't jive with me, and like I'm not the best salesperson in the world, because I could sweet talk people into anything, but I don't have that killer close kind of willing to say anything to make the deal kind of thing. I'd much rather just not charge for anything, and to sort of create happiness for people. And so having these crazy experiences, I learned that what I was really good at, what I was naturally drawn to, and um, and really from working at family business, I started my own comic book publishing company. I talked about that advice with my friend John Suntress. I made comic books for a decade, and I wrote them, marketed them, ran the business side. I did everything except draw them. And if I was able to draw, I could have probably made some real crazy money there. But if it wasn't for my business background, sort of classically trained and not classically trained, I wouldn't have been able to create this company as anything more than a hobby. There's tons of comic book publishers that do stuff as hobby. I was able to make it a real business. We had distribution in 5 countries. one of our stories was optioned for a movie. It never got made, but we got a small check and a neat press release and stuff like that. And it all came from thing. But when I talk about my comic book days and how that turned me into who I am now, I would not be. I've had amazing opportunities all along my career where people took chances on me and I delivered. But the reason I was able to get to where I am now is because when I was making comic books, I had, I was selling a book that was $1 more expensive than Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, all characters they knew. I was selling a book of, characters that they didn't have that 40-year emotional appeal to. And I had to come up with ridiculous premises to sell these books and to get people things. So we did stuff like scavenger hunts around cities. We did all sorts of crazy promotions inside of comic book shops. We did, tons of crazy things that got us attention. My characters were featured in, we were in an episode of Entourage. We were in an episode of Yes Dear, the CBS comedy. We there were so many opportunities that came up from sheer hustle, from knowing what to say in certain situations, knowing when to say no to things, and just never kind of giving up. And it was through all that stuff that sort of self-taught, self-trained, reading every book I could get in touch with, having every conversation with people I could sort of thing. It was those days that I really developed the systems and structure around what I do today that makes me different, that makes me stand out. And my marketing approach and my output is very different than most people because like I don't believe I'm derivative. I've said this many times, but the books everyone's reading are not the books I'm reading, and I don't do that to have hipster street cred or anything like that. But I feel there's so much more to learn from a 1980s era marketing book that's talking about the why you should be marketing and the how you should be marketing instead of some of the more current books that are all about the tools, because tools come and go, and there's a lot of people now who are really great at one tool. Maybe they're HubSpot experts and things, and that's great. That is a skill and that is valuable, but how many tools have we seen kind of dry up and go away? And just knowing the tool inside out is wonderful, but not knowing why you're doing the things the way you're doing them, I think, is where a lot of marketers nowadays fall down. So I say, I don't think we're building true marketers anymore. We're building like people who are excellent at tools, but we still need those people to know, what is the psychological pull of doing something this way or that way, and stuff like that. And I think that's where I excel at, as opposed to hopping on every single new trend, single new tool. Like I look at Clubhouse. Is it Clubhouse? I don't even know
Hmm.
the new
Yep.
thing. It ain't for me, man. I've tried really hard. And I see while other people are thinking, but like I saw I saw an Instagram post of someone who said they're spending 16 hours a day in Clubhouse, and I'm like, if you can spend 16 hours doing anything, you're not working. So, but it's all about. I look for constant streams of inspiration, and I look for them in all different places and not just the common places. I don't even know if I answered your question. I got on a run there, and I don't even remember what the question was.
Yeah, no, I think you did, right? I think you answered that and what makes you a marketer and why you're different for sure, man. So you say though that you study the old classics of books. Are you in, Rice and Trout, or what are you reading, Saul, to learn about that psychological pull? Is there, Roy Williams from The Wizard of Ads, or what give me some examples of some books that you've read, maybe that others have not.
So, like my favorite book of all time is called, where is it here? I could hold it up. My favorite book of all time is Chasing Cool. It's written by the son of the founder of Barney's New York, and he goes through, and it's a 15-year-old book that is still as relevant today as always. There's no mention of tools and things like that, but it mentions, it goes really deep into like the nature of subcultures and the nature of authenticity. It talks about how there's so many things that Barney's did that nobody else did, and it was very conscious, these decisions. Like every single fashion brand, like major department store, Saks Fifth Avenue, all these places, they were known for their windows. The amazing, crazy attention
Yeah.
and things that go in their windows. And Barney's was no different, except for one thing. They had the mannequins, the clothes, all the crazy things in the windows, all the dressing, except there was no wall to the back of the windows, because they wanted more than anything, if you were walking by, to see inside the store, to see that there was people walking around and people shopping. They felt that every other store made it this closed off, vaulted thing. And there was nothing more important than seeing people walking around, because we're drawn to, oh, that person likes that thing. That's validation. So I'm going to go in and check out what is that lineup for? What is that thing? And they talked about the story of Grey Goose vodka. I don't know if you know the whole story, but one of the it's like, now it's commonplace for people to go, I would like a Grey Goose vodka, or and name. But in the early 80s, nobody named the brand of the alcohol. You said, I want a screwdriver, I want everything. So what they did was they hired a bunch of out of work, like, supermodels to go in, hit on lonely guys in bars, and maybe they went home with them, maybe they not. They were not instructed to sleep with these guys. They were just instructed to flirt. But they basically would flood the most popular, influential nightclubs in New York City, and these girls would go up to guys, and if the guy said, "Can I buy you a drink?" they would say, "Yeah, I'd like a Grey Goose and vodka, but make sure it's Grey Goose." So tell the bartender. So the guy would go up and say, I'd like a Grey Goose and orange juice or whatever. So two things were happening. Everybody was hearing this Grey Goose over and over and over. The bartender kept hearing Grey Goose. They're like, holy shit, we better restock this stuff. For whatever reason, people are doing this. And they literally started, like, it was almost like the earliest whisper campaign, literally a whisper campaign, because these pretty girls were whispering into these guys' ears, make sure it's Grey Goose and stuff like that. And it's just that there's so many amazing things. Other books, I got to look at my bookshelf. I've got so many of them. I love all the Marty Niemeyer books, Zig and Zag, The Brand Gap, just Zag. Um, maybe, I'm rambling, but my favorite business book of all time is a book called Days Gone Mad by Dick DeBartolo, and it's a semi autobiographical look at his days working at Mad Magazine. And William Gaines, who was the founder of Mad Magazine, is, to me, one of the most interesting business owners, CEOs that gets no attention or credit whatsoever. But he created such a ridiculous work environment that people loved coming to work every day, did their best work. My favorite story of Mad and William Gaines is, I always feel weird saying it's my favorite story, because it starts with when his wife died, which is a weird way to start a story. But he had a beautiful love affair with his wife. They were high school sweethearts, thing. And unfortunately, when she passed away, and he was elevated of age but still running Mad, um, he sort of dealt with his grief with food and wine, and not in a dangerous sort of way, but he just became kind of a foodie, where he never cared about what he ate. And now he was reading about restaurants and wanting to try it and all these things. And he was a very wealthy man, but he was incredibly cheap. So he had like $1 million New York City penthouse, but the only room that was refrigerated was a closet. The only room that had air conditioning was a closet, which was his makeshift wine cellar. So that's sort of like where his brain was and stuff like that. But he started this thing called Mad Trips, where he would read about a restaurant somewhere far away, Italy, Russia, Asia, Africa, and he would tell everybody at Mad Magazine that instead of a Christmas bonus, he was starting this thing where they would just go on a vacation, all of them. So you were allowed to bring your spouse, you're allowed to bring your kids. They chartered planes, like, and they would never know where they were going. They were just told to pack for hot or cold. And the very first trip that they went on, they all get in the plane. They literally flew to Africa. So imagine like you have no idea where you're going. You figure maybe you're going to Disneyland or something. They fly to Africa. They get off the plane. There's a yellow school bus waiting for them. They all pile into the school bus and they're literally driving into the jungle of whichever part of Africa they were. And they get to this house and they all get out and they knock on the door. And this person answers the door. And Bill Gaines hands him his subscription renewal card because he found out that there was one subscriber of Mad Magazine in Africa, and they were all going to go thank him personally. And then they had a week-long vacation, eating the best food of the country, and team building and all these things. And so when I say I look for inspiration, there's inspiration everywhere, and it's not always in the form of a book with the word marketing on the cover. And I've read all the Reese books, and I like all that stuff. And I've read everything from Seth Godin. I think Seth's brilliant. I'm not sure I'm a fan because I think he's written the same book 7 times, but it is very impressive to see what he's done and what he's accomplished. I think he's far more brilliant on stage and in his blog than in his books, but that's just one person's opinion. But I've read everything because I try to consume as much stuff as possible, and but for me, it's I get more out of you know non-business related books. Find the business lessons inside, or find some sort of jumping off point for a creative idea or inspiration or something like that than everything. So I try to I try to just feed my content. Where is that? There it is, little tick. I try to feed as much content into myself as I can all the time, because you never know when that light bulb moment's going to go off. And I try to sort of spread it out between professional stuff, personal stuff, and just stuff to shut my brain off.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you mentioned that experience with the Days Gone Mad, the fact that they would go different places. I worked at an organization called Strong Investments years ago where Dick would take many of the top performers on an experience trip, right? On a
Mhm.
trip that had nothing to do with finance, but expanded their horizons because many of the people that worked there had always been in a small town, right? He liked a
Mhm.
lot of folks that had gone away maybe to college, but then had not seen much of the world and totally expanded their horizons so they could come back with a global view to help infect everyone in the organization with, hey, it's much bigger than just us. I mean, to your point about the subscription card in Africa, so interesting, right? Because people invest from all different places, much the same as people read different magazines in different places. So I
Mhm.
really, that resonated strong with me. And I think that might be where your love of experience comes, Saul, is you've got all these different books that you've read and experienced that kind of blend into who you are and what you've done, which leads me to my next question and something we talked about in the green room ahead of time, and that is you've talked about you're counting the days to when you win the lottery. So you're Canadian, right? If you win 60 million, that's what, $180. But what would you do
Mhm.
if you won the lottery, Saul? What would you do? Tell me a little bit
So
about that because I think that's fun.
and first of all, I know that nobody does actually win the lottery, at least nobody I know. And I know that buying lottery tickets is like a tax on the poor, and it's stupid, and you're not supposed to do it. You're supposed to invest your money. But man, winning the lottery was my mom's absolute dream. And my mom passed away last year, so in some way, I'm trying to keep her dream alive, even if it hurts my soul because it doesn't bring me any joy not winning. But like, I think about winning the lottery all the time, which is maybe my deepest shame and guiltiest pleasure. But like it's for me, it's about it's not about the money, and it's not about anything like that. It's about well, one, financial security, of course, but it's about to be able to do things that my way without being dependent on anybody. I've worked for myself for pretty close to 12 years. Every now and then I take a 1 year contract, picking up an interesting project here and there. But I've worked for myself for 12 years, and even before that, I worked in a family business for close to 16 years, and whenever I tell that to people, people always say, "Oh, you're an entrepreneur," and I'm like, "Not really. Like, I hate this." And like it's, I like I'd love to find an amazing job that I fit in, and they get me, and they give me the freedom to do what I want, because like for me, everything is about freedom. If I were to win the lottery, besides all the silliness, the cars, the houses, the the vacations and the trips, I would literally just do pro bono work for the rest of my life, working with artists, and because like art is a huge, huge thing for me. I have a small art collection. I wish I had a crazy art collection, which I would if I won the lottery. And it's like it's funny, and this is maybe the most embarrassing thing I've ever said to anybody in a public forum, but I have a notepad, or like a note entry on my phone, where I have a list, and it's not a bucket list. I'm not, but for me, if it was to be a bucket list, everybody says they want to skydive or do this or that or whatever. Like, I've got a list of about 27 artists that I'd like to own an original piece of work from before I die. And I'm such a snob when it comes to art. I'd rather not own something by somebody if I can't have the original. People always say, "Oh, just get a print, get a poster, get a reproduction." That's that. I don't know. I can't do that for some reason. Even like, I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm robbing myself of something. But there's 20 plus artists that I'd love to own an original piece from, and there's 100 artists that I'd love to work with, and make them more popular, more well known. Use my superpowers for good instead of profit and stuff like that. Because you know my whole career, I've been in situations where I've had to make the project into something that I would be proud of and want to do. So, I've worked with companies that you've heard of, and I've worked with companies you've never heard of. But everything I've touched has been something that I've been really proud of. And and it's sometimes it's taken no effort to convince the company, and sometimes it's taken so much as me just saying, if it doesn't work, fire me. I'm your scapegoat, and stuff like that. And 98% of the time it works perfectly, and I'm always right. And I'm not always right because I'm brilliant or handsome or anything. I'm always right because, like, I plan, and I may make it look like I'm casual and sort of half-assing things, but man, if I'm going to put my name on something, I'm going to cover it from every corner and know what's going to happen, and know the possible, you know, things that could blow up in my face, and have plan B and plan C and plan D. Like, I'm one of the best in the world at what I do, and it's because I'm borderline obsessive about the projects and stuff like that. But if you were to tell me I didn't have to worry about money for the rest of my life, I'd spend the rest of my life promoting artists and doing really cool shit and paying for it all out of my own pocket.
Wow. Wow. Well, you mentioned the obsessiveness there, which I think is
Hmm.
really interesting. I mean, the fact that you'd have a list of artists that you want to get an original piece for, and the fact you have 100 artists or so you'd like to work with, I think that does make you different in a good way, because you're able to then think, okay, so maybe, maybe you get one of those pieces and you're able to finish one of those, or
Hmm.
perhaps you find a project and a way to implement, to work with them, but your ability to see it from multiple angles and obsess about that, I think, is absolutely what makes you successful. So, also, where
Hmm.
did you learn that, man? Where did you learn all those multiple angles? Was it back in the corrugated box business with the family? I mean, is it just something that just happened, or how do you recommend somebody who maybe like me, who is not super, is thorough about that and is more idea driven? How do we get started on that thinking, man?
So I would just say it's just how my brain works. That my brain kind of works in a few different ways. I'll be the first to admit I miss a lot of the obvious stuff. So I kind of gloss over the obvious stuff and drill down. When I say obvious stuff, like you know, I don't know. I can't even think of an example right now, but in meetings, like the 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 thing that everybody is thinking, I'm probably not thinking, because I've trained myself to think I don't have to think about that stuff, because everyone, everyone else is thinking about that. So I go right to the harder stuff, or the more difficult, or the more interesting, or the more everything. So, and it's just kind of like, my brain works in a couple ways. My brain works in sort of covering things from every angle. My brain works, and where's the humor in this? Where's the inappropriateness in this to either put it in or take it out? What are the things that could go wrong? I'd say half of what's made me successful in my career is predicting everything that could go wrong, and either having a fail-safe backup for it, or allowing it to go wrong, knowing that it's going to go wrong, because maybe having that go wrong is an advantage in some way. I'll give you a story. We uh, did a marketing stunt for a belt company. It's called John Y. Belts, JONWYE.com. Check them out. They're amazing. And John is one of the greatest people in the world. Hand makes beautiful belts, and they're amazing. So, you know, I was just kind of pitching him ideas, and one of the ideas we came up with was that belts are kind of the forgotten accessory. You see in a fashion show, you're looking at everything but the belt, and nobody. How do you focus on just the belts? So we did a guerrilla fashion show in a very, very populated shopping mall when people still went to shopping mall food courts. We did in the food court the day, no permission, and we had a male and a female model basically do a runway show completely naked except for belt. And because that's how you get people to look at the belts, you take away all the clothes. It makes perfect sense if you think about it, Phil. But when I talk about having a plan for every angle, we had 10 GoPro cameras to film the whole thing. We it was pretty low, um, low production value because we couldn't tell anybody we were doing it. So we literally had a guy walk up, unroll a giant red carpet, a ghetto blaster, turn on some music. The two models dropped their trench coats, and we started walking, and it was like a real fast show. But we had a plan for if security shut us down in 10 seconds, what do we do? 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute. And the funny thing was, it's one of the funniest things I've ever done, is security just came and watched. They never shut the thing down whatsoever. So after about a minute of this runway show, the models didn't know what to do anymore, because we'd spent 2 days like literally looking at, here's the emergency exit, here's the bathroom, here's this, go hide here. We'll have clothes waiting for you and a baseball hat so you can walk out and nobody will get arrested, all this stuff. And nothing ever happened. So, it was great that we planned for everything. But, if you look at that on the other side, what happens if we hadn't planned for it and they did shut us down in 10 seconds? And, all of a sudden we're dealing with bail situations and people being held and all this stuff. So we had, I don't know, I think you ask how can you train for this. I think being not the most popular kid in high school or middle school, I've watched every movie that's ever been made in that era, and I love heist movies. So maybe in my brain, I should just be robbing banks for a living, but I'm not supposed to say that on a public forum.
That's funny, man. That is really
Hmm.
funny. So you talk about the cult, maybe the cult of not being the most popular kid enables you to do that. So, um, give yourself, maybe 12-year-old Saul, what advice would you give yourself knowing now what you know?
I think about this all the time, not necessarily about, 12-year-old Saul, but I'm very introspective about my career. And I think that, I wish I've been called fearless many times, but I think I've only been called fearless in the last, handful of years, 5, 10 years or so. I wish I was way more fearless earlier in my career. I've been fired a bunch of times. I'd say most of the time I've been fired, I've been right. I've always been on the right side of history and things like that. But like, I should have taken greater chances. And whether that was holding out for, more money, or holding out for a better role, or going out on my own earlier, or um, pushing clients to push the limits further, or doing more stunts for myself. But I should have been way more fearless, because you know what, man, like, you get fired and you feel like garbage, but usually someone else picks you up pretty quickly if you're able to do your job and do great work. And like, I even notice now as I'm getting older, I take less chances, which I sort of try to, talk myself out of being more, risk adverse now. Because like I used to do anything, man. There was nothing. I literally was fearless, and I still am fearless in theory now. But I wish that like I don't know, like I feel that you know the world has changed, the moods of people have changed. Cancel culture. I did a live stream interview the other day, and I'm talking about what people should be doing, and these are what you should be doing with your marketing, and do. And this woman asked me if I ever worry about cancel culture, and it's funny, no one's ever asked me that, and it's sort of been in my head for 24 hours now. It's absolutely not anything I worry about, because like I'm not doing, most of my inappropriateness is directed at myself. I don't lash out at other people, and the joke is usually self-effacing. But it is an interesting question, because I have seen like some people I admire get canceled. I've seen people like get canceled for reasons I absolutely agree with, and I've seen people get canceled for things that were probably not necessarily on should have been canceled, but close enough. And where that line of political correctness, which I think we're too far over the line. And when you get too politically correct, it just means that people hide their thoughts and sort of whatever quirks and things, and they manifest even larger. But it's funny. I think that every now and then I think even I'm going too far, and I scale it back. And the minute I scale it back, I feel bad, and just I hate censoring myself in any way. And then just kind of, I don't know. Again, didn't answer your question. This is more like you said you wanted to lie down on the couch. This is therapy for me. You're saving me $160 this week.
Sweet. That's great,
Mm,
man. That's good. But no, I think, being unconcerned with cancel culture and focusing on doing good work, not to be
mm,
offensive, let's be really clear here, but just
mhm,
to really go out there and push the limits, I think is fantastic advice, Saul. I think that's great for all of us to be less
mm,
afraid and to be more, more straightforward and really say what's on our heart.
mm,
And to your point, I mean, political correctness gone too far is too far. I mean, for sure, man.
mhm.
So as we think about that, right, as we kind of wrap up with this conversation,
Wrap
if
up. I thought I bought an hour here.
oh, you get an hour. Some of that's just me and you, though. I don't think we can let
Okay.
anybody else listen in. That's going to be a little more difficult. So,
Mm,
but as we think about that, right, as we think about being more fearless, what are you
mm.
working on right now, Saul, that you're going to be more fearless and that you're going to push through and make something amazing for someone? Is there any cool projects that you have in your heart right now that you're working on that you'd like to share with us?
So I'm working on two things right now. Both are kind of NDA stuff, so I can't really share exactly what they are, but I will share kind of the formula for it, if that's helpful. So
Yeah.
here's my secret to creating experiences. It's and if there's anything that I'm really good at, I know where that line of good taste is. I know kind of what people will let you get away with, and then I cross that line by like two baby steps. And I've talked about this like 100 times, but it's if you're just going up against that line, you're not creating memorable experiences. You actually have to cross that line by a tiny little bit, and that's where the magic of the memorable experience really happens. Like Guy Kawasaki once said, if you're not ruffling some feathers, you're not doing anything interesting. I really truly believe that. Like, and I don't think enough brands, like the brands probably know where that line of good taste is and good sense, and they take 7 steps backwards. And that's why most campaigns and most things are completely un talkable or unmemorable, or in any way. But to really create a great experience, to really create something that someone's going to turn to their friend and say, you'll never imagine what I saw today, or you won't believe this, or whatever, it's knowing where that line is and crossing it, just the tiniest bit. You don't want to run past the line, and that's where you get in trouble, and that's when you get canceled. But if you're always just over the line, that's where kind of like the interesting stuff happens. When I keynote conferences, I keynoted a conference in New York City, a couple of years ago, and my opening line of my talk was a 9/11 joke, and it was self-effacing 9/11 joke. It was my experience with 9/11, so it was directed internally, but it made everybody in the room super uncomfortable, but it made them pay way more attention to what I was talking about. Then I used my 90 minutes on stage to win them back and have them love me. It is really all about that I use shock and I use sort of inappropriateness as sort of a tool in my toolkit, but it is really really important to cross that line the tiniest bit if you want to get any reaction out of anybody, and reaction is like the whole name of the game.
Yeah, it sure is, man. It sure is. And
Mm,
we talk a lot whenever you and I talk, we talk about that
mm,
inappropriateness quite a bit. So give
mhm,
it before we wrap this here, so give me one more example of that inappropriate irreverence that you share that we can use to maybe bounce off of, even though we're not going to be derivative and never going to be as good as you at this. Give us one more example so that we can get inspired and go forth with some more uncomfortable awesomeness.
like you want me to say I'm not wearing pants, or I'm not sure
Well, not
exactly
not
what.
again. We all know you're not wearing
Yeah.
pants, Saul. That's not that
Uh,
irreverent. But
uh,
one of the projects that you were on, or one that that was more kind of shock and awe that worked out well.
Hi, so we did a project probably a year ago for a data research company where they asked me to create a series of inappropriate products and advertisements, but like commercially acceptable products and advertisements, because they wanted to show that you really should trust data research, because it's almost impossible to know what will connect with people through like intuition and stuff like that. So the two products I created, which I'm super proud of, and because they're just funny, but created um, Amber Alert Lager, which is a beer for gentlemen who don't want to wait for the tagline was for the gentleman that doesn't want to wait, and it had like a older looking gentleman with like a very young looking woman sitting on his lap, and it was all done in like a 60s Playboy cartoon style animation, and so that should be super offensive to people. We set up a website, we set up everything, it looked legit. And the other one, and I'm going to tell you the story. I have the punchline to the story. The other one was a product called Thwongs, which were thong diapers for fashion forward moms with babies, beautiful babies. And the ad was like a little baby. We photoshopped it. We didn't mess around with actual kids, but we basically just photoshopped like ass cheeks on this diaper, so it looked like these babies were wearing thongs, and they came in leopard skin and all sorts of things and stuff like that. And both of these products should have made you scratch your head, and they should have like offended people. But when we set up the website and we sort of started our campaign, I had 7 people reach out to me to be national distributors of our beer, and we had a couple of stores who wanted to carry our baby thongs. So it sort of proved the point of the campaign that you need to test everything and you need to put some market research, because you actually have no idea how your campaigns and ads are going to resonate with people, because I purposely tried to offend people, and I probably missed out on $1 million opportunity on both of these sites.
Good. So
Mm.
how would the
Mm.
Amber Alert lager taste, Saul? That's the question I've got for you.
Well, it'd be light and youthful.
Very good, my man. So cool. So Saul, we know that people could go to theideaintegration.com to check you out. But what's your preferred social if people want to get more inspired by your brand and your awesome personality?
So I'd say, probably Instagram is where I spend the most amount of time. My feed is not the most interesting. Like I sort of take the approach that anything I put in my feed is something I want to last forever, and anything I put in my stories are usually a bit more risque, and because they're ephemeral and they'll go away in 24 hours. So if you really want to see what's in my brain, just keep checking out my Instagram stories. But yeah, that's where I spend my most time. I just like Instagram the most, being that it's visual. But I'm Saul Colt everywhere on the internet, and every sort of platform has a different part of my brain in it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Saul Colt, you are brilliant, man. I love spending time with you. I appreciate all you shared, and I look forward to tipping some Amber Alert lager with you one day soon.
All
Thanks,
right, cool.
buddy.
Thanks, Phil.